There is a solution for that is sponsored by VARC Solutions. VARC Solutions helps small businesses succeed by delivering expert QuickBooks bookkeeping, consulting, quick-base development, and integrated solutions. If you own a small to medium-sized business that uses QuickBooks or QuickBase, the experts at VARC Solutions can help. In business since 1999, with people who care and the knowledge and experience to solve your toughest problems. Visit varcsolutions.com for all your QuickBooks needs. Welcome back to another edition of There's a Solution for That, where we help small businesses succeed by discussing challenging business problems and best-in-class solutions. All right, welcome back, everybody, to another edition of There's a Solution for That. We have a great guest today on our show, Stacey Bullman, who's the founder of I'm Not Mad at You. And we're going to be talking about how to not fail at business. Stacey's got a lot of experience and expertise in this area. And so welcome to the show. Love that you've come to the show to share kind of your wisdom and world experience.
Thanks, Brad. Thank you for having me today.
So tell us a little bit about you. And of course, you've got an interesting company name that's very unique and special. So I'm Not Mad at You is an interesting thing. So tell us a little bit about the backstory on that.
Sure. I'm the CEO and founder of I'm Not Mad at You. We started the company close to 10 years ago. I worked in corporate America for 25 plus years. I found lots of opportunities to help businesses. Oftentimes in the corporate world, I wasn't able to make a significant impact in the areas that I saw opportunity for solutions. And it was kind of evident to me, and throughout my life, people kind of always were looking for the solution from me, but people thought I was mad at them. So the name has a lot of iterations and a lot of meaning, but for this purpose and for today, since we're asked this quite frequently, a lot of people thought I was mad at them. I have a tone and a demeanor. I'm very direct. I'm very blunt. But interestingly enough, at the same time, people might have thought that I was mad at them. They also were seeking my counsel, solutions, help with whatever problems that they had, personal and professional. Also, I was sort of a leader most of the times, and people were looking to me. And often it was to, show a shoulder of support or not be mad at them. Many times the conversations would be, you're going to be mad at me, but I did something, or X. And it was always, why would I be mad at you? That doesn't impact me at all. I'm going to sleep really well tonight. You said that you're not, that I would be mad at you, really as a projection that you probably know you did something that was incongruent with yourself.
Right. So like if a child is like coming to you and they've got that face, right? Like, okay, you're gonna be mad at me, and I did this to the pet, or something like that, right? That's kind of the
Exactly.
perspective you're talking about.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think if you set yourself up that way with someone that you think is maybe critical, or with someone that you think maybe has high standards, and then obviously when I offer I'm not mad at you, this is for you. This is something that clearly you know that you need to address, or it's something that's a problem for you. So that's one of the iterations of the name. As I've said, there are many, but I'll use that one for today.
Oh, that's funny. I mean, what's interesting about that is I used to have a license plate on my car, and it was "I lead you," and every time somebody would stop me, they're like, "What is that? What does that mean?" And like you, I'm like, "Well, let me tell you what it means today."
Right. I mean, for real, when I started the company, it had a pretty profound meaning, and there was a story in my life. And then there was the story of how we named the company. And then you tie together your life and that name, and then you work the business for 10 years, and there's every iteration of
Yep.
the conversation. The most important thing I think I did was use my tools and marketing degree to create a name that would at least want people to ask the question,
Yeah.
right?
It worked for me. I'm like, what does
Right.
that what does that
Right.
mean? So
If
tell me
I'm
more.
Stacey Bullman and Associates, and I'm not mad at you consulting, there's probably no question from the people that are having me on these podcasts to say, tell
Yeah.
us about Stacey Bullman and how you came up with that name.
Yeah.
So I give no opportunity to, as they say, maybe win the meeting or start the meeting on the right foot with kind of an
Yeah.
interesting and engaging story that makes me maybe relatable.
Yeah. Well, to your point, somebody's probably not had you on a podcast to say, so Bullman, tell me more about that. Where's the where's the Bullman
Not
from? Where's
usually.
that?
They usually know where the derivation of it is as well.
Well, so do me a favor and at least clarify for me in the audience, like, so what is it that you do as a
Yes.
business?
Yes, absolutely. We are business consultants. We work with small to mid-sized businesses primarily, and we work kind of holistically with the companies in all areas, in sales, in marketing, in finance, in accounting, but primarily in CEO soundboarding. We work with the CEOs of the company. We talk to them weekly. Almost every decision they're going to make within the company, they're going to probably pass through us and us shoot holes through it, see if we think that that idea is smart, if it also is in line with the profit and loss statement, if it's in line with the company culture and the messaging. So that's been really the product and service that has turned out to be the most successful for us. But we work with all industries and we
Okay.
kind of work holistically with the businesses that we work with. I don't like to say we're sales or we're marketing or we're one or the other because people generally kind of pigeonhole you. And there's a lot to be said for just talking to a CEO weekly, even if it's just for that person to qualify their decisions or to have someone just to feel comfortable with that's not part of the business, maybe
Yeah.
not related to them, maybe
Yeah.
outside their social circle, who also is being paid to make an intelligent decision. And if it's not an intelligent decision, is accountable to that poor decision as well.
Got it. No, it makes perfect sense. Well, yeah, I mean, I like how you phrased it, CEO sounding board.
Yeah,
Because yeah, I mean, a lot of us that either run businesses or own businesses, a lot of times it does feel like we're in a silo, right? And we're making the best decisions we can. But if, especially if we don't have a leadership team or people that we can talk to about some of these things, it sounds like that'd be really, really helpful. So let's
exactly.
talk in terms of business. Because one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, you've seen businesses that have thrived, and you all have also seen ones that have failed. And so, in your experience, why do you think a lot of businesses do fail? Like, what is it about it, if there is any kind of common thread there that you've seen?
I think the most common thread that I have seen is a lack of attention to the numbers and a lack of attention to paying attention to those numbers and following the guidance of them as well.
Hmm.
Basically, a business is one big set of data. As now we are learning, right? Now people are starting to understand the value of data. But the background that I have was for the Fortune 100 companies where every decision they make was only based on data. There were no gut decisions. There were no decisions made with the heart. And I know that sounds callous, but generally speaking, a business is going to fail because they're not paying attention to the numbers of the business and what that's telling them and where you should be spending, where you shouldn't be spending. If your spend is successful, because as we know, sales is the lifeblood of an organization.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, your business has to have more inputs than outputs. And it's usually a lack of attention to the inputs and outputs that will generally lead to the demise of that business.
Hmm.
And there are many things tied to
Yeah.
that, but that's the simplest way is that you really have to pay attention to the inputs and the outputs of your business.
Well, and
And
so this is interesting. Obviously, it sounds really, really simple, and I love how you have simplified it to make it something very easy to understand. But let's go one level deeper, which is, okay, let's say somebody is not paying attention to the numbers. What is it that you've seen that they are paying attention to?
yeah, yeah, operations, human beings, um, the as I say to people, let's say you're really strong in construction and you open a construction business. Unfortunately, you're probably only going to get to do construction about 10% of the time. But if you're not minding your P's and your Q's, you're over there leaning to the operational things that feel very comfortable to you. So, for instance, a person that owns a construction company is out on the site and doing a project manager's job because that owner maybe doesn't feel comfortable with who they delegated the job to, don't trust that person, or simply they don't have a person in that position to do that, and they don't then have themselves set up operationally to succeed. So generally speaking, you see most of them lean to the operational things because generally speaking, in that small to mid-sized business, people start businesses and things that they're familiar with or comfortable with or have a passion for. And that being said, you have to pay attention to all the other things that you don't like and honestly
Right.
probably not that good in. And if you're not good in it, you have to delegate it to someone who is, or
Right.
find help, hire a person like I'm not mad at you.
Yeah,
Right.
no, it makes a lot of sense. I've heard that phrased, in terms of like working in the business versus on the business, right? If
Yeah.
you're just in the business doing the day-to-day transactional stuff and not focused on the business, you can probably lose sight of some of those things. If you're the roofer on top of the roof, you're probably not paying attention to how much insurance costs what's
That, or
the
you may
maintenance
not be
cost.
following a business development plan, right? If you're up on
Mhm.
the roof, how much business are you knocking on doors to get new business?
Right.
No, not even.
Right. So what are some of those processes? I know like when you think of, I mean, obviously focusing on numbers is one thing, but focusing on processes is also a very important component from what I've seen. So what would you say are some of the processes that are critical to ensuring success?
I love processes. So many things you speak to that are to my heart, but processes is critical. Back to in the Fortune 100 companies, you follow process. There really is nothing that deviates. And so that's true to my heart and in my DNA and in my, before I ever got to corporate America, it was process. I was an elite athlete. I believe in the disciplines of process, routine, consistency. So there are many processes, obviously, within a business. There's a business development process. There's also, I believe, every position in the organization needs to have a standard operating procedure, SOPs, for each position. And that's something that it seems really simple. It seems maybe not very necessary, but the cost of replacing people is very expensive, as you know. The cost of training individuals is extremely expensive. Also, oftentimes a company doesn't do a good job of letting an employee know what do we expect of you to consider this job done. So oftentimes you'll get a training manual, which is 5,000 pages or whatever. Go take
Right.
these 62 courses online and you're sufficiently trained in our, but that's the training. What I say is give them a SOP, and it shouldn't be more than one slide on a PowerPoint document, ideally. And all that is what are the 15 or the 10 things for me to for you to say that my job is complete for the day,
Hmm.
for
Right.
the week, for the month, for the year, for the quarter. If I do something that's redundant, obviously my daily task is my daily task. If I am a salesperson or business development manager, clearly I have tasks that would be daily. I'd have tasks that might be weekly. I'd have tasks that might be quarterly. And then I'd have tasks that might be annually, things like that. But you really should do a good job of defining the SOPs by department, by job. Then obviously you should have a process to where you are looking at your financials each month. You should have a process for business development. You should have a process for pretty much everything. I hate to say it, but really, like if you're on social media, you should have a process for how you're, doing your marketing plan and your social media calendar, right? Sometimes you're working on that maybe 90 days in advance because
Yep.
that's a process. So I don't know. I could go round and round with the process,
Well,
but
this is a challenging subject, and the reason I say that is, obviously, every entrepreneur that starts a business is not always process centric. They don't maybe
right,
that maybe or may not be their gift, right?
right.
It's kind of like asking somebody to be organized that's not organized. It's
Understood.
really really hard to get that done.
Yep.
Um, and so like from my experience in business, I've always been in positions where I've been either I've had somebody complimenting me in those areas, or I've been the one complimenting somebody else in those areas. So regardless, it sounds like you need to surround yourself with folks that can do some of those things. Like if somebody's listening to this right now and they're like, yeah, I don't do process.
That's fine. then bring someone on board that does, or you hire. I mean, I'm not a
Yep.
big fan of people having a bunch of business partners, right? I don't like, listen, a company can be super profitable when you're dividing it by one. A company becomes a lot less profitable when you start dividing it by two and three and four and things like that. But oftentimes people want that security blanket of
Mhm.
another human being because they might think that they bring those skills to the table. If
Yep.
they truly do, then it's worth a shot if that person again makes sense and it makes sense for them. But I'm not a fan of the business partner. I'm a fan of outsource this, right? You don't have to be process oriented. There are millions of individuals like myself.
Yep.
I hope that they are as skilled and qualified as I'm not mad at you is, but there are lots of people that you can have come into your organization, maybe only make a 3 month commitment, get these processes established. Just, once they're established, they're established. That
Yeah.
shouldn't be too hard to manage if you're disciplined enough to the processes that were derived in however you came about it. So
Yep.
get help. I mean, find people, whatever it is. My goodness, to ask Chat GPT. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, there's almost no excuse today for people to find the solutions in these areas that, as you say,
Yeah.
that maybe were not their strength before.
For sure, especially like, I mean, even like you just mentioned today, it's like you could put in a post or chat or something like that, and it'll come back and say, "Would you like me to build a process for this?"
Of
Yes,
course
I
it
would.
does.
Yes, I
And
would.
it'll grit it out for you and send it to you on a CSV file. And I encourage
Yeah.
people, as I said, ideally, for some people, like you just said, that will work. And then some people, fortunately for me, still want a bridge between that automation and the execution for, yeah, we could mutually on the phone and soundboarding, and we have created a process just like that. But that CEO still sort of needed myself in the middle of there to sort of, hey, the logic would be we could ask Chat GPT and let's prompt it well. And then, like I said, for now, consultants and people like myself, I think if we're strong in the areas, we are a bridge between
Yeah.
obviously the answers at the finger of your tips or the solutions at the finger of your tip and to execution. Because certainly someone can say, here's the answer,
Yeah.
and your execution's over here. And sometimes right now, I'm finding a nice spot in the bridge.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mean to go too this deep into process, but I think,
Sure.
but I'm curious to go one level deeper because that's just who I am. I just like to go deeper sometimes. Is so let's say that you've helped a company come up with these standard operating procedures. Far too often, at least from my experience, those things get put in a box and they don't get used, or they get forgotten about, or they get out of date, stale, whatever you want to call it. So, from your experience, again, how do you help a company live those procedures, keep them up to date, don't let them collect dust in a drawer? Like, how do you go from the concept of having that to actually living it?
Well, I'll give you an example. First of all, you have to live it throughout the organization, right? So you can't just create an SOP and then SOP, like then someone A has to be responsible to work the SOP, the person that is in the job. Then somebody's responsible to continue to maintain those SOPs. But um, well, in that process, I forgot the example that I was going to give you. I hate that. But I mean, there has to be a process to create the processes. And then within your organization, you have to have somebody that's responsible to manage those processes and continually to work with them. And unfortunately, my apologies for that great example I was going to give you, but maybe it'll come to me later.
Yeah, it'll come to me later. Well,
Exactly.
is that person that you're talking about? I think when you and I chatted a little bit before, I think you mentioned something about a business champion. Is that the kind of person you're talking about? Somebody that's like that owns this and says, "This is what we're doing, and I'm going to see this from beginning to end, and beyond that." Is that kind of what that role is geared for, or is business champion something
I'm
else in
back
your
to
mind?
I'm back to the good example
Yep.
is we create SOPs, and this might answer your other question, but if you create SOPs for a position, you know what those SOPs should also be? The review for that person.
Hmm.
So if you integrate the SOPs throughout the organization, then they don't stay stale because ideally you're reviewing a person, whether it be quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. So
Hmm.
you don't have to. So if you create processes, it's also incumbent upon you to integrate the processes within the organization and make them talk to each other. Like, for instance, the SOPs for a mechanical engineer at a certain company need to marry up with, if we expect this to be part of their job, then that's also part of their job review at the end of the year or whenever that comes time. So if you integrate it throughout the organization, you have an easier time to make it not sit still, sit stale, collect dust. And I mean, if it's collecting dust, then back to the organization is operating in a way that, by the way, many of them are very successful. So I don't say this stuff to say like, oh, a company can't be successful if they don't do these things. They absolutely can. What you
Yeah.
do find a lot of times is companies in their infancies and they grow really fast and really heavy and strong, is they didn't have time to do these things. But I will tell you this, if they had someone stay on them in the beginning, what happens is oftentimes they get to 3 or 4 years old and they have no systems and processes. And now they're 20, 30 people. They don't have really HR established. They don't have SOPs established for roles. They don't have, succession plans. They don't have management templates. So it makes it kind of difficult when you're trying to do that at 3 or 4 years. But I run into that a lot. I run into that a lot. So
Yeah.
when I have the opportunity to work with startup companies, which I don't work with a lot, but when I do, I really stay on them hard on creating these SOPs, which they feel like oftentimes when they're in the startup phase, like, this seems like such a waste of time and sort of silly. But I've got a client who we've worked together since startup, and every single role we're creating those SOPs, we're
Yeah.
creating, that tied to their bonuses and incentives. And so the bus moves the same direction for all of us.
Yeah, well, it makes a lot of sense, and I guess how I tend to describe that is, if you're the founder of a company and you know how to do every single thing in the organization from memory, right? Because you've just done it for however long, that's one thing. But when you start hiring other people and you're peeling off parts of what you do and or leveraging other people to do things that you can't do, that's when it's like that knowledge and experience that you have is great if you're doing all the jobs.
Exactly. But one day, and you're trying to tell the leader, one day you're not going to be doing this job. And so
Yeah.
when you're trying to compel them to spend an hour and a half on SOPs, which to them seems somewhat not the best value for their time,
Yeah.
trying to explain to them, I get it. Listen, in my consulting, oftentimes I have to tell them things and ask them to do things that at the time do not seem relevant. But I really believe, as a visionary and as someone who's leading businesses, is you do have to spend some of those trench hours where you do not see a single nugget of gold for that time when you're doing that activity. And that's another task that's very hard for leaders, is time spent now to see a reward tomorrow.
Right.
And you see leaders oftentimes um, avoid those type of tasks as
Yeah.
well.
Makes sense. Well, how that then ties back to the financials. So, like, you're making an investment now, you might see costs now, and you might not see direct revenue results on that for some period of time. I assume that's something you also kind of counsel folks
Always. I
on,
mean, if we
right?
spend $5,000, we first off, every dollar we spend, we generally know when is, let's say we spend money on a trade show, right? So we know the booth cost us X amount of dollars. We know we had X number of employees there at X cost.
Yeah.
So the booth and the show for 3 days cost us $10,000. Boom. We know what it costs. There's the outputs, right?
Right.
And then that 3 days goes by, and okay, maybe we don't know if we got 10,000 because maybe it's not a selling show. Maybe we got leads and we got contacts. So then we say, okay, we got 30 leads. And we think on average, a lead, we close about 40% of the time when we have a warm lead like this. Good. Okay. And our average project's about $6,000. So 40% of 25 leads. Okay. What is that? 6 or 7, something like that,
Hmm.
whatever. That's more than
Yep.
that. It's probably like 10. That being 10 times 6, 60,000. Boom. As long as then we monitor that the sales did come in from the clients from the trade show.
Right.
Boom. Now we know that's a 5-to-1 return on our investment. We should do that again.
Yeah.
Simple. So sometimes we're doing the math and it's daily, weekly, monthly, hourly. It just depends on when you spent money on something that you thought was related to sales and then tracking whether or not you did or didn't get a return on that investment. Same thing with, it's hard on the operational side, right? So let's say you spend money on a new tractor. You're in construction, you spend money on a new tractor. I don't know.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
A
So
new truck, a new
right.
warehouse, or
It's
whatever.
a
Yep.
capital out, it's an asset, right? It's a capital expenditure, whatever, however that classifies, right? Then that thing's going to depreciate and do what it's going to do. So that's harder. But I will say there's things on the backside of the profit and loss center that you can pay attention to. So obviously you always pay attention to sales, like what we just talked about there. But then you should always be perusing the backside of the profit and loss statement, which are your costs. So for instance, let's say we participate in a networking group and we pay $400 a month, some networking group, and we don't even never attend. Or we've attended and we've never gotten a client and we've been attending for 6 months. Boom, we've spent $2,400 and we've gotten nothing for it. $2,400 on the backside
Right.
is if you're a 30 or 40% margin product, I mean, you got to multiply, that's like doing $10,000 of sales. So that's an area that you also want to bring the owner's
Hmm.
attention to. Like, if you don't have an opportunity to do more sales this month, maybe there's just nothing we can do to drive more sales. Let's look at your costs and let's make sure that we're completely efficient there because sometimes we can help the bottom line,
Yeah.
not always with sales. That backside is actually super profitable when you can save money on that side.
Right.
And usually sometimes a 3 or 4x.
Yeah, well, and what's also amazing about just how you presented that was in those times that are more lean and maybe the sales aren't coming in, and suddenly you focus a lot more time and energy on the cost to get as highly as profitable as you possibly can get on the cost side. When things do come back, it's going to make you even more profitable when the
Absolutely.
sales come in, right? So there's no reason
Absolutely.
not to do that. Um, Unless you're just like growing like crazy and sales are going through the roof, and maybe it's just you don't even have to focus on cost because the sales are
Sure, but you
there.
should.
Yeah.
You
You
know what I mean? Like
should,
you
right?
should,
Yeah.
right? And ideally, even when you're going gangbusters, you still have some processes and some things like this that you're trying to have discipline about managing your business because it's like you just said, it's only going to make you even better down the road. So
Right.
I say this all the time, and I've said it in almost all my podcasts, but I really feel this way. It's good or bad. We all probably should be deploying some type of coaching or help. Like
Mhm.
the best CEOs in the world have help. They have advisory boards, they have board members, they have probably 10 to 15 people at any moment that's ready to help them, right?
Yeah.
Then they
Yeah.
also probably have, excuse me, a coach, an actual consultant, business coach,
Yeah.
guru, whatever word anyone wants to call it.
Right.
Then they might also have some other areas, therapist, mind coach, who knows? I believe that the small to mid-sized companies out there are really doing themselves a disservice. They don't think about coaching. They're not really deferring to that because maybe they think, look, I'm successful. I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. But guess what? You probably could be doing better, or it could be easier, or you could be more efficient, or you could brainstorm with a soundboard person and you might think of a whole nother place to take your business that you weren't even thinking.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah,
do
I
think that
agree.
that's where the small and mid-sized businesses, it shouldn't be that you're having a problem that you should think about getting help. You should think about getting help because this is what the best in the world do in every arena of sports, business, leaders,
Right.
all of them.
I love that. I mean, like you said, like, even the fastest runner in the world have a running coach. Even the fastest swimmers in the world have a swimming coach, right? I love that. What is what there's two thoughts that kind of come to mind as we talk about that. One is I feel like there's probably an ego thing for some people, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like I'm smart enough, I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm the smartest lady in the room. I don't need anybody's help. I can figure this out on my own. And so there's that ego that's just like I'm not gonna go ask for help, which I'm a big fan of Brene Brown out of Houston, where she talks about vulnerability, and
Yep,
it's like the strongest position you can have is to say I don't know,
absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
it makes you available to the world to help you. Um, and then so that's one thing, and then the second thing is, I think again there's a tendency from the folks that I've worked with in the past, businesses that I've been in, leaders that I've worked with, etc., where the tendency is to surround yourself with people who will say, yes, I agree. That sounds amazing. Right. And so you're not getting any conflicting ideas. You're not getting everything you're getting is filtered with a yes mentality. Right. And that isn't really helpful. Right. It's like,
No.
like in my company, I've got a leadership team that thinks very differently than me. And I not just learn from them, but I learn from their different perspectives. Um, Even if I don't agree necessarily at the end of
Sure,
the day, I mean, I can still say I
sure,
don't agree and I'm going to do it this way. But
sure.
having someone that challenges my thinking, questions, what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, leads to better decisions. Because quite frankly, if I'm not getting challenged, I'm probably not thinking about it too deeply, right?
I mean, possibly just depends on which item it is, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, everything you say is spot on. Is spot on, and I do think the more successful people get these things and they understand these things, and then maybe the middle level people or the ones that are kind of, whatever you want to call it, treading water,
Hmm.
either many times just have never heard of this or haven't got the access to it or didn't know it exists.
Yeah.
I was working with a client the other day and kind of showing that client a profit and loss statement and putting their business into the inputs and outputs model, which they at this point had not yet done. And we were able to explain it to them so simply, so easily in the inputs, outputs methodology. And this person, looked at me, the client, and was, wow, it's just so easy the way you've shown this to me. And as you said, sort of no one at that point in their life had ever taken the time, like they explained, I came from a family where, my father did X and my mother did X, and nowhere in there was I going to learn this simplistic math. And I didn't learn it in school. And even if it had been in school, I probably wasn't going to pay attention to it because the way they were teaching it. And
Hmm.
probably in 5 to 10 minutes, I was able to show the client sort of and you can just see the light bulbs as I see your light bulb. You see
Right.
the light bulbs going off in their head when you've explained something to them that honestly has been a barrier for most of their life.
Yeah.
And when it is around money, you're kind of freeing up more than just the money. There's a lot of guilt, shame, fear, anxiety that's tied up with people being concerned about their finances or maybe never not truly understanding them. So it's very satisfying. It's also really kind of simple.
Yeah.
And back to just allowing yourself to get a perspective that you haven't maybe heard. Also, like you
Hmm.
said, a lot of leaders I don't like to quote her. That being said, vulnerability is extraordinarily helpful for all of us. We have blind sight, we have blinders on. Also, as a leader, it is our role, oftentimes in the organization, to portray confidence, strength, that we have all these solutions and the answers. And so, in a vulnerable place, in a private place, you still hopefully can say, look, that's why I'm not mad at you. We like what we offer. We're not internal, we're external. We
Yep.
are not mad at you. You're going to be able to tell us whatever. We don't judge. We don't really care. We're here for the solution and to solve the riddle and to go forward and to, 10x these companies or 100x. I mean, our numbers are
Yeah.
remarkable. We are proud of that too, like, the donuts and the money made. But to be fair, there's such a coach, consultant, what do you want to call it? It is a very blended type of thing you're playing because you
Right.
are motivating a human being. They are being vulnerable with you, certainly the ones that I work with. I mean, it's required.
You
It's
have to be.
showing your profit and loss statement to another individual is quite vulnerable in and of itself. And we don't
Yeah.
work with companies that don't show us their profit and loss statement.
Makes sense.
Showing how you spend money is real vulnerable. So
Right.
am a big believer in that the help comes when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. I also know that for most of us that have the D personalities or we're big leaders, that, saying like, I need help is challenging. And also many times that same personality didn't raise their hand and still solved it for themselves, right? So there's so many conflicting things. If sometimes it's not them not even being vulnerable, sometimes they really believed in themselves so much that they forget that there's a resource available. It isn't even
Right.
that they are being stubborn. They really just believe so much in themselves. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of places that people might be missing the intersection to get on the highway,
Yeah.
none of
I
which
love it.
make them wrong, right? And like I said, a lot of people are successful despite not doing things maybe the best way possible.
Well, and to your point, it's like, yeah, they could be more successful
Sure.
with some outside perspectives, some different perspectives, some
But
critical.
sometimes their ego would tell you that they'd say, no, I'm perfectly, I've had these answers. No, no, this success and this is perfect to me. And we ask question, you're like, how can you be better? And if the answer is truly, no, I cannot, which I've only had one person in 10 years say that, you're right. We cannot help you. But it was also kind of a crafty marketing line of, I'm not mad at you makes people and companies better. That's what we do. That's all
Right.
we do. Okay.
Yep.
So when we meet an individual, we obviously, one of the opening lines we get to say is, how can you or your company be better? And
Hmm.
in the 10 years, every single person, and that is one of those ways to get those leaders to open up and possibly say something that might open up the door to you getting in there to that place of vulnerability. Like,
Right.
sales are great, but I can't deliver. That just like I said, if you ask a very innocuous question on how you can be better, they might open up that window for that availability. But if they say they can't,
Yeah. Well, and
good luck.
the power of a good question is not to be understated, because you could say, "How are things?" and "How are they?" Well, they're great.
That's done, done. You didn't open up the window. You didn't let the snake in the room at all. I mean, that's when naming the
Yeah.
company and when creating our pitch, shall we call it.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at you was inherently kind of smart, right? You've already acknowledged that, right? And
Yeah.
inherently, wow, they're probably gonna already start the conversation with me by asking about that name. So boom, you already let me in the room by asking me the question, not the other way around. And
Right.
then our tagline that we make people and companies better, it gives me the opportunity to say, like, how can your company or yourself be better? And back to, rarely an individual is ever going to say they can't or that their
Hmm.
company can't. So then it's two questions. And now I'm completely in the room in there. And if I was
Right.
relatable, if I'm charming, if I'm nice, I might get to stay for a minute. And then I might
Yeah.
find something that is of value to that person,
Hmm.
right? Because that's really what we're looking for is whoever's across from me, for whatever the transaction may be, personal, professional, we're really just trying to find out what in their world is valuable to them. For you and myself, when we first spoke, you wanted to speak to me and you want to see, look, do you have anything that's valuable to this podcast and
Yeah.
to the people listening? And you made a judgment. You asked me valuable questions to say, like, I think that she has something valuable. That's really our responsibility in almost every conversation we're in, personally and
Right.
professionally. And then if you find something that, oh, this would be valuable to them. Oh, look, I have something to offer in that space. Then you get to sell, right? But that
Exactly.
might be two, three, 6 meetings in, or two, three,
Yeah.
4 hours in. But oftentimes people are, I got this to sell, and boom, like, okay.
Yep. Well, I mean, kind of a related, it's related to what you just said, but like I'm on a couple different forums, and one of them just today, somebody was like, how do I launch a referral partner program? And I'm like, I'd be happy to help you, because we've done it on both sides. We're reselling partners for like 30 different solutions. So we've seen it on the recipient end, but we also have our own partner program
Yeah,
where
sure.
we've got like 200 partners under our umbrella. And it's like, look, I've seen it 20 different ways, and happy to share, what's worked, what hasn't worked. But
Sure.
and we're not, and I have nothing to sell in that respect, right? I'm just
Right.
trying to share knowledge and experience, but hopefully by sharing some of that expertise, this person will come to view me as a resource, right? Somebody that
Absolutely.
does have hopefully some insights that I can help with them. And maybe it'll eventually lead to something that'll be related to what we do have, QuickBooks or
Totally.
QuickBase or whatever. Yep.
I've said this before, the best salespeople generally, or whatever you want to term this, will give you some of the best information for free.
Hmm.
Generally, like you said, they'll connect you to people. They will offer things that they're no part of. If you really are someone, because generally I consider a true salesperson, what do you want I don't like this term, but they're connectors. They really believe the value of the relationships that they have. And while they may not be on the golden ticket to every single interaction they have, they believe sort of in that karmic, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
scratch the back, golden
Yeah.
egg, whatever theories that every person will tell you they have their own little mindset with this, that are good at this. So
Right.
I believe those of us that operate in that space, generally speaking, want to connect people, want the best for all people. We feel like when all of us are doing well, we'll all do well. So I think that's a mindset too, right? I
Yep.
think that's as much of a mindset as it is anything else. And I
Oh,
think that we like to
yeah, it's totally
connect.
a mindset.
Yeah,
Totally a mindset.
yeah.
Well, as we kind of wrap up the show, let's do a real quick outline here. So we started talking about how do businesses not fail, and one of the key highlights that you mentioned was focusing on the numbers, right? Being super focused on the numbers, like what's working, what's not working. You mentioned inputs versus outputs.
Yep.
Talked about making sure that you've got standard operating procedures in place that people are using,
Yeah.
performance reviews tied to those reviews, um, and then just generally speaking, kind of having that attitude of vulnerability, asking for help, seeking outside guidance and thoughts to not just add value to what you're thinking, but to maybe question you a little bit and get you to think about it differently. Anything else along those lines that you're like, I this one thing I forgot to mention?
No, but I mean, I got something I'm going to add, but you are a great listener and your recap is phenomenal. I mean, we've talked about a lot in this call for 45 minutes. We're pretty robust here.
And I didn't even need
You
AI
did
to
a
do it.
phenomenal job. Were you cheating? But I say this, I will say this. I obviously in everything we talked about, I believe in setting goals. And this I will leave everyone like set a goal that's big enough to scare you, right? Because
Mhm,
if it doesn't
mhm.
scare you, it's probably not big enough to challenge you. So set them, measure them, track them, and go get them.
All right. Well, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Stacey, for being on the show. And if somebody wanted to reach out and get some of that feedback and that help that you're talking about, how do they do it?
Easiest way to find us is at our website, www.imnotmadatyou.com.
Okay, www.imnotmadatyou.com. I love it. Stacey Bullman, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Brad.
All right, and for everybody else that's listening and paying attention, I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's helped you think differently about your business, and maybe help you focus on areas that maybe you haven't been focusing on. So, I mean, obviously, the reason why we're all here is to be better, to impact our customers, impact our families, impact the lives of the folks around us, and so if this can contribute to that in one small way, we hope it does. And we'll hope to have you here next week for our next show. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
There is a Solution for That is produced by VARC Solutions. This episode was produced by Ashley White and Aaron Riley. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Watch the video version on youtube.com/There's a Solution for That. Or visit varcsolutions.com/podcast, where you'll find our entire podcast archive, as well as show notes, links to solution providers, and complete transcripts of every episode. If you love the podcast, please leave a review with your comments.